in local matters, we're turning to North Carolina, where one of the most competitive Senate races is happening this year. The city of Charlotte will also hold some events as part of the Republican National Convention. President Trump canceled the Jacksonville, Florida portion of that convention this week. For more on all of this, I want to bring in Nick Oxner. He's an investigative executive producer at WBTV, our affiliate in Charlotte, North Carolina. Nick, so good to have you with us. The Republican National Convention was originally supposed to take place in Charlotte. Then President Trump got into a fight with some local leaders over there, decided to move a bigger portion of the RNC to Florida, now has canceled that. Tell us a little bit of the backstory of all of this. And since Charlotte is still expected to host a portion of the event, explain to us what that's going to look like.
Yeah, I'll start with your last question first. The city attorney for the city of Charlotte sent a letter to the RNC this week saying, look, don't expect to bring your full convention back to Charlotte. So here's what we expect it to be. It's basically going to be a limited gathering where just the delegates assemble in Charlotte for the purpose of officially casting their votes to renominate Donald Trump as president. I think it's supposed to start between 8 and 10 a.m. It's supposed to finish around 2 o'clock. The biggest change to that schedule is until, a couple days ago, that schedule said at 2 o'clock all the delegates were going to get on an airplane and fly to Jacksonville. So I guess the biggest change there is that they're not going to fly to Jacksonville. This whole thing has really been a moment of I told you so for Democrats in North Carolina. The primary villain, if you will, in moving the convention out of Charlotte to Jacksonville was Democrat Governor Roy Cooper, and to a lesser extent, our Secretary of Health and Human Services, Dr. Mandy Cohen, that, said, look, we can't guarantee that you'll be able to have a convention safely here by August. And, well, it turns out at least Democrats in North Carolina are using this as an opportunity to say, turns out they were right.
Yeah, well, there are now more than 100,000 cases of coronavirus in your state. How do North Carolinians feel about the handling of the pandemic from their state and local leaders there?
Yeah, broadly speaking, the governor's getting pretty high approval marks on handling of the virus. We've seen him out front frequently. That being said, there's a fair bit of questioning over transparency, things like outbreaks in meatpacking plants, of which we have a lot of, in nursing homes around the state. I think the biggest thing really that the folks are frustrated by is the slow pace of unemployment benefits being distributed in the state. But, the Governor Roy Cooper continues getting pretty high marks overall for his handling of the virus.
Well, Nick, let's also talk about that Senate race taking place there. It's one of the most closely watched races in the country right now. Democrat Cal Cunningham faces Republican Senator Thom Tillis. What have the polls been saying? And do you have any additional predictions?
No, I will not make a prediction here because we're so far away. I'll say that likely this race will be tight. It's worth noting that Senator Thom Tillis, in his, up for re-election for the first time, won his seat 6 years ago in a razor-thin margin. I think it was less than 2 percentage points when he won in 2014. This race is going to be pretty close. Maybe, mostly because North Carolina is just the purplest of purple states, right? We know we're a battleground state in the presidential race. Same thing, we have the attention of Republicans and Democrats in the Senate race, too. The biggest thing that should be concerning for Thom Tillis is the fact that he's underperforming President Trump. When you look at polls, Thom Tillis is not as popular with Republicans as Donald Trump is with Republicans in the state. And so right now, I think you're seeing Cal Cunningham with a bit of an edge in the polls that at the moment does not appear to be insurmountable. This is probably still the tightest race in the country right now. But, there's a very real possibility that if Tillis can't make up some of that ground with Republicans, that he's going to end up too far back to make up all the headway he needs to.
Well, Senator Tillis unveiled new recommendations to protect businesses and residents from COVID-19. He's also supported wearing masks in public, which does make him different from some of his Republican contemporaries. But earlier this month, he also received some backlash during a town hall when he said, quote, "We do have some concerns that in the Hispanic population, we've seen less consistent adherence to social distancing and wearing a mask." How are people in North Carolina reacting to these comments and overall the positions that he has been taking on the pandemic?
Yeah, so it's interesting playing out here on the ground in North Carolina. Again, a lot of Democrats and more liberal-leaning folks are saying, look, how out of touch that is, how tone deaf. Again, a lot of folks are pointing out that North Carolina has a large Hispanic population that works primarily in these essential jobs in meatpacking places, for instance, where we're seeing large outbreaks. And they're saying, look, you're saying they're not being careful. Maybe have you considered that they're actually going to work and doing things to keep food on our table? Meanwhile, we see Republicans are pointing to the fact that North Carolina has a higher percentage of our Hispanic population testing positive. In fact, the governor and DHHS secretary just held a press conference yesterday with the consulate generals of Mexico and another Latin American country here in North Carolina, encouraging the Hispanic community, or trying to encourage the Hispanic community to take more preventative measures, make sure you're getting medical treatment as well. Democrats see on this as an opportunity to say tone deaf, Republicans saying, look, look at the emphasis being placed on the community right now.
Well, Cunningham has raised more than $7 million in the second quarter. It's the most that a North Carolina Senate candidate has ever raised over a 3-month period. Senator Tillis has yet to release his Q2 fundraising numbers, but we can kind of expect that Cunningham is really on the ascendancy, at least when it comes to those fundraising numbers. So what is contributing to that?
Yeah, look, there's no question that Cal Cunningham has a lot of money, and that is what is making this race so tight, right? And heading into the last few months leading up to the election. Beyond that, North Carolina is a state with a pretty well-organized Democratic Party that has played off this theme. In 2018, they played off that theme to break the supermajorities in the state House and state Senate, right? There's a lot of focus on the Tillis seat this year. Look, we could help, if we beat Tillis, we could help Democrats take the U.S. Senate overall. And there's a lot of outside money pouring in, right, both to the campaigns and to outside groups, and party money pouring in, too. And that's going to make this race a very expensive. Tillis set new records when he won that election in 2014. I expect that we'll see new records again in this race this year.
All right. Well, as you mentioned, Tillis does not enjoy the same level of support among Republicans as President Trump, even though he has been a vocal supporter of the president. I'm wondering how closely his campaign has been aligned with the White House.
Well, so we have seen support from the White House for Thom Tillis going so far as to late last year, basically taking steps to freeze out a primary challenger that was trying to challenge Tillis from his right. And the White House and President Trump and his political apparatus basically told the political consultants working with the challenger, look, you're going to be persona non grata if you continue helping this challenger. And ultimately, the challenger in the primary dropped out. And so I don't think it's the issue here for Tillis is not that he doesn't have support of the White House and of President Trump. The issue is that he doesn't really have the full-throated support of Republicans in North Carolina. I was at a Trump rally last September where Tillis took the stage and got booed. So
tell us more. Help us to understand that. Why would the Republican senator from North Carolina at a campaign rally with Republicans be booed?
Well, Tillis, prior to this reelection cycle, has kind of been more of a moderate guy. Before he was in the Senate, he was the Speaker of the North Carolina State House, where he had a Republican, but pretty moderate Republican record. At one point, he opposed additional funding for the border wall, and then he flip-flopped and supported that. And so he's always tried to do this dance of being Republican enough to appeal to Trump supporters, but also trying to appear to strike a moderate middle of the road. And, that's a hard dance to continue, doing as you head into an election year like this. And I think that, again, he had a primary challenger for a while. He ultimately dropped out, but that was running on the whole notion that Thom Tillis was not conservative enough. And so trying to move him further to the right. And so Tillis moved further to the right. Well, then you're going to start alienating some of your middle of the road voters as well. And so Tillis has had to do this dance back and forth. And we'll see ultimately if he can pull that off.
All right, Nick Oxner, so interesting talking to you. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.